call to order the Wright County Board of Adjustments for October 4th, 2024. The first order on the agenda are minutes of from last month's meeting of September 13th. Have everyone had a chance to review those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries. Aaron, could you get us started, please?
Yeah, so the first item on the agenda, we have the Travis Tollett request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf step forward and state your first and last name for the minutes?
Travis Tollett.
All right, I'll give an overview and then we'll hand it back to the board here. So the request, it is located at 13943 102nd Street Northwest in Southside Township. The property itself, it's about 0.33 acres. It's zoned urban rural transition and located on Lake Augusta, which is classified as recreational development. The initial request was on August 23rd for an addition to the existing home, as well as a storage building within the ordinary high water line setback of the lake. At that point, the board did allow a continuation so the applicant could reassess the proposal due to concerns with distance to the lake and the septic. The applicant then presented updated plans at the September 13th meeting to construct an addition. It'd be about 28.5 feet from the center line of the road and 7 feet from the septic absorption area, while reducing the proposed storage building size at that time and moving it further from the lake. The board did indicate that they still had some concerns with the proposed addition distance to the septic and concerns with the storage building within the shoreline building setback because it wasn't able to meet water-oriented accessory structure standards. So they did update the request again for this meeting, is to construct an 828 square foot main level and an 855 square foot upper level addition to the existing home that is located within the shoreline building setback. It'd be about the same distance, 28.5 feet from the center line of a local road. I believe, and we might need some clarification, but it's gonna be about 8 feet from the septic absorption area. You're moving it over a foot. I know on the plans it did indicate maybe 10, so I wasn't sure exactly, but I believed it was 8. So
I just said we needed, I told the building guy that we needed a minimum of 8 feet, so whatever you can do to make it
sure.
come to that code.
Okay. And then either way, variances are going to be needed for any addition that's going to be located within the road setback as such, and then within the septic absorption area setback as well. So as far as that goes, the township, they did make the approval of their initial plan, which was, larger, more intense, I guess, including the storage building. So with that said, they said it was similar to other properties out there. Same thing with distances. The other properties had buildings to setbacks and whatnot. They also noted that the coverage was acceptable, referring to lot coverage. And as noted at the previous meeting, or the previous meetings, I guess you could say, the only comment we received was a neighbor stating that they are against the request because they mentioned maybe a mound system is coming to the surface, and they said in quotes, I guess, lot is too small. But that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add to that?
Nope, I think we covered in the last meetings about the complaint the neighbor had. It was just because the prior owner just let a hole go and we filled it back in. I have no issue since we filled it in about a month and a half ago, so.
Okay. Thank you. I think with that, I'm going to open up to the public for any questions or concerns. Does anyone there have any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll take the conversation up to here. And Dan, will you get started?
Yeah. I see we have our environmental officer here, and could I ask a couple of questions of Scott?
Good morning.
Good
Scott
morning.
Decker, Wright County Planning and Zoning.
Scott, with 8 feet and during construction, is there any concerns or is there any way that to be able to protect that mound system? Because I'm concerned it's designed for a 2-bedroom. We're gonna go basically to a 4-bedroom. And I know we can do different sourcing and pumping into it and make it work. But that being said, we're going to be taxing that area and it's going to be creating more moisture and all of those things. And putting it 8 feet to 10 feet there, what is that gonna do to the footings of the home over time? I mean, this isn't necessarily normal where the mound system has been built for a 4-bedroom home on some of the lake lots where we have gone 10 feet. I know we have permitted that, but it's a little different case here with a smaller system. And when you start dosing it, you're
Yeah.
always putting moisture in there.
I'm not super concerned because we don't have living space below ground.
Okay.
So, so just minor concerns with constructability as the house is being built. You'd want to make sure that they stay off the mound. So fence it out, I think that's a reasonable consideration. The footings, I don't think we're gonna risk any issues
Okay.
with that. The effluent should be treated by the time it reaches any part of the house or anything like that after it's seeped through the soil. So I don't think we have major issues there. The sizing of it, it can be managed with the way you dose the mound. But, so we add extra bedrooms into the house. We know that the bedrooms don't use wastewater, people do. So the owner just needs to understand that the mound has a finite capacity to accept effluent, and if you overload it, it'll start to have problems. And so we stick a timer on the lift station, and it essentially flattens out the peaks and the valleys of water use. And if he has an alarm, they would need to stop using water for a little while. So we can manage that, but it's not always ideal if you have a homeowner who likes to ignore alarms or press the off button. So, minor considerations that is, I think as long as Travis is aware of it, he can probably deal with them.
Okay. I guess those were some of my concerns with that, so we're not having a failing system.
Right, right. Yeah, because it looks like about the only place on the lot for a mound. So if it starts to fail, you'd probably just have to reconstruct the mound as it is, and maybe then you'd be having to add pre-treatment or something like that to add some longevity, and that would be expensive. Travis, I don't think wants that either. So he wants the mound to be working for as long as possible if he's going to be living here. So it's in his interest as well. So,
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Excuse me, thank you. Looking at it, it's marked 10 foot 3 and 7/16. Is that the lower level? Or is it, I'm having a hard time figuring out that outer line there is more closer to 5. Is that so, or?
I believe we
On the
were gonna come to that 8 feet that we had prior meeting. I think it showed 7.5. And I think you might have drawn it. So either way, we are making it to that 8 foot mark.
On the lower level?
Yep.
And your footings there are 42
Yep.
inches deep?
Yep.
For Dan's concern a little bit. That
Yeah.
was my two concerns. I see you eliminated the shed totally. So that was our other hang up on it. I guess I'd like to see what the rest of the board has to say, but I think I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan. Russ?
I'm all right with what's going on there. The septic is still an issue to me. You're out of town or something and whatever, or rent it out or leave your.
Not planning on renting it out.
Yeah, but I mean, or I should say a friend or something uses it for a week or whatever. I'm thinking you gotta have an alarm system that.
Yep, we're okay with that.
Just shuts everything down.
We plan on being here for a very, very, very long time, so we don't want anything to go wrong with it.
But it's still an undersized system. That's why I have my hard feelings about it. Other than that, the rest I'm fine with.
Thank you, Russ. Bob?
Yeah, you've addressed several of our concerns from last meeting. The shed is no longer on the table anymore. So have you dedicated a room? The shed was for your
We're gonna
wife's work.
dedicate a room for the office in this. So that was essentially what we had to come to.
Good, good. I think Travis has addressed the issues that I had last meeting, so I think he's done a good job.
Thank you, Bob. And likewise, I've seen you address many of the issues here, and I think it's a good option. So with that said, can I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion to construct a 828 square foot main level and an 855 square foot upper level addition to the existing home that is located within the shoreline building setback, 28.5 feet from the center line of the local road, and the footprint of the main level would be 8 feet from the septic absorption area. We'll put this as site plan Exhibit A, and building plans noted as Exhibit B.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'd like to add a little bit, if I may, to that, to second it. Could we have it on the drawing that the mound to have a fencing installed during construction? Have the
Absolutely.
emphasis on that?
Yep. My father-in-law's doing all the general work on it. So yeah, we got,
That's
I'm okay.
acceptable to me.
I'm good with that.
I'll second it then.
Okay, seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
No.
So noted. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the Eric Robeck request. I do not believe that they were going to be here. They did request to withdraw their application without prejudice for that storage building, but I'll call 3 times to see. Is anyone here on behalf of the Eric Robeck request? They're shaking their heads no, but I'm going to still have to call out anyways. Is anyone here on behalf of the Eric Robeck request? Anyone here on behalf of the Eric Robeck request? All right, so once again, they did submit a withdrawal form. I do have a signed copy of that from them, and they would request that it is withdrawn without prejudice.
I'll make that motion
Okay.
to, I'll withdraw without prejudice.
Do I hear a
Seconded.
Seconded? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
All right, last item on the agenda. Looks like we have the Scott Vanlith request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf please step forward and state your first and last name?
Morning, Lori Thingvold.
All right, I'll give a quick overview here. So this request, it is located off of 30th Street Southeast in Rockford Township, I guess as well as Degg. So the property, it is approximately 245 acres collectively and zoned general agriculture. In 2022, an entitlement division was approved that left the remainder of the property, which is what's highlighted here up on the screen, with 2 residential building entitlements. This request is to use one of the available building entitlements and divide it out on 64.5 acres. Variance is required for a 64.5 acre entitlement division, as 10 acres is the maximum. The township approved of the variance as requested, and no written responses from the public were received. So that'll wrap up my overview. And then if you guys have questions or want to see anything, I do have the topography, the prime soils, and the floodplain.
Thank you, Aaron. The applicant have anything you wish to add?
Not really, no, other than we're just trying to split off this 64.5 acres to make it an equal split amongst 4 owners of the entire thing. That's really what this is about. So this would be my brother Scott's piece of property. He mainly wants it for hunting land. At this time has no thought on building a house there. I don't know that he, maybe in the future, but at this point in time, he has no plans to do that, so.
Thank you. With that said, is there any comments or questions from the public that would like to? Seeing none? You have anything to wish to comment on? If you could step forward and just state your name and share your thoughts, concerns.
Hi, my name is Mike White, and my wife, Mary Beth. We own the property directly south of what we're talking about here. So we're just here to get information on what their future plans are with that property. We had no idea what the variance was for. So we're just hoping that they don't plan on converting that to residential and building something near us. Because our property, if you look at the map, our house is on the very far north end of our property, and it's on the 50-foot setback. So we're as close to their property as we can possibly get. So we're just hoping that you said what you said, and that is to use it for hunting and whatever else it is, and not convert it to residential. So we were just curious.
Sure, I'll just give a little clarification too. So, as part of the entitlement division standard, there was around 1978, they added entitlements, which is about one house site allowance for every 40 acres or quarter section. So, I mean, a few of them have already been used here, so they still have the allowance to build 2 homes out here. So regardless if they went through a variance or not, I mean, they have the ability to have up to 2 homes on this property currently. I believe they're also in the land use plan for rural residential, similar to what happened, as you can see on the right side of the screen or to the east, where, I mean, there is potential, not through this board, not administratively through our office, but that area in the future may have the allowance for additional residential building sites just based on its location and future land use plan. So that's all I have really on that specifically.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
With that said, I'll open this up for discussion with the board. And Dan, can you get us started?
Sure. So there is one entitlement going with that 65 acres?
Correct. And then one would be remaining on the remaining portion of the land.
And there is less than 2.5 acres of prime?
Yep, correct. They're right at about 2.5 acres. The only prime that's really out there is this little piece here. And then you can see that line pretty much is going to split kind of right down that. So,
Okay.
and the soil borings were done, I believe, and Lori could confirm, somewhere right around this area, I think. So just verifying that a septic could be, had out there. And based off of what's being proposed in the boundary and where the wetlands and the floodplain and everything are, I mean, this is really the, let's say, buildable location.
Sure, higher ground. Okay, I guess after that, I'd like to see what the rest of the board has, if there's anything that comes up with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Russ?
That entitlement, does that go with a certain piece of ground here? Which piece would it go with?
So,
There is one entitlement yet, isn't there?
yes, so there's two
technically,
entitlements.
yeah.
Well, there's 2 entitlements.
Yes.
Yep.
One would go with this piece of property. Honestly, mainly because we are a family of 4 siblings. 3 of us have already built a house on this property. And that building entitlement for the 3 of us was basically gifted to us from our parents. My brother's the only one who doesn't have one. So that's kind of the reason of, having an entitlement go with this piece of property. But like I said, he has no intention of building a house there. I know things change, but at this point in time, that's not his plan. He really just wants this piece of property for his hunting ground.
I mean, they do also have, well, obviously it's 64 acres, so it's over 40, but in this portion down here, it is a full quarter. The reason it just can't be sold off individually is because it's not having road frontage. So it needs the road frontage, and we would say anything over really 5 acres, right? We're looking at needing 300 feet of road frontage minimum. So that's being met here as part of it.
All right.
I have no further questions.
Thank you, Russ. Bob?
Yeah, Aaron just pointed out about the road frontage, so we don't have an issue there. Since you went through the work of the floodplain, let's see it. Yeah, so, that area, a lot of it is, probably unsuitable for building anyway. And it looks like when they drew their map that the bigger piece of farm ground is left mostly intact. So I think this will be an acceptable plan to me.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
Yeah, going with what my colleagues have said, you know, we have our 300 feet of road frontage. The back there has no access, and there's portions above the floodplain to get access to the back. It's all straight lines, we're not doing any jogging or anything like that, so. And you're, you know, allowing one building entitlement with that, knowingly that there's only one left on the remaining portion of the property. So I can go along with what they're asking for.
Thank you, Dan. Likewise, I live right near there. I'm familiar with the piece of property, and yeah, it's not buildable other than what's along the road there. And it would fit in with the rest of the neighborhood, and I think it'd be, yeah, I'm fine with it, so. I think with that said, do I hear a motion?
Oh, before you guys do that, I didn't put anything in there on the, or in the staff report. It's a larger property, but discussion of animal units. I know on entitlement divisions over 10 you typically do, but you know, obviously this is a 64 acre entitlement division. So I mean, just thought for discussion purposes, if you guys wanted to, before a motion was made, discuss that.
Thank you. I had written that down.
animal?
And if I, yeah, so, with probably an animal unit restriction, I mean, it's not farmland, so I don't think we want to have the expectation that you could put cattle out there, so, do we have an idea of how many animal units we want to limit this to?
I would say,
But we're talking about a 64 acre piece of property here, and pasture, and horses.
Most of that 64 acres is swamp, is wooded. It's not conducive for grazing or cattle, or I suppose you could eke out a little bit in the woods, but it would still be wooded. So I wouldn't feel comfortable having a high number of animal units because it just wouldn't support it. So those are my thoughts.
like 5 units or?
Oh, yeah, I think, yeah.
Mr. Chair, you know, and then we need to look at, you know, what the neighborhood is too. There's a lot of, you know, smaller properties nearby. You know, a high number of animal units may not fit the character of the neighborhood as well.
I agree.
I think Tracy generally recommends if there is gonna be animal unit condition on a property of this size, I think it's limited to not a half animal unit per acre, because that would be, you know, quite a few here, but it'd be 9.99. I think once you hit 10 plus, I think then you start talking a little bit more like feedlots, so.
I'm comfortable with that,
With 10?
yeah, with 9.99.
9.9?
Yeah, or not to exceed, yeah, 10.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Do we hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 64 acre entitlement division out of PID number 215-100-211-103. Subject to survey, subject to deed restriction and legal description of the remainder, a site sketch noted Exhibit A, and a total animal of 9.9 allowance.
All right, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Can I
Sure.
ask a question here first? That low ground, does that hold water or is it all year?
Yes,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
Point of order. Technically, we have a motion on the floor. We need a
Okay.
second before we get into discussion, and then we can go from there.
Thank you. Okay. Hear a second?
And I'll second that.
All right, any discussion?
I asked, is it that low spot, it holds water year round then?
Are you referring to the
To,
part where my cursor's at right now?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say yes. I don't go back there much in the winter or anything like that, but to my recollection, yes, it does hold water all the time.
Why I ask that is, there's a lot of differences in low ground, you know. Wet is night, is that animal unit too high for that area, you know?
Perhaps, that, you know, we weren't considering animal units, I guess, at all on, on
You don't
his
have to, but we look at it too as, right, you might not be the owner, the next
Sure.
person's the owner, right? It's on 60 some acres. I don't have Tracy here to confirm. I know there's some wetland regulations and stuff like that, but typically speaking, on a 60-acre farm, you might be allowed a lot of, like, say, cattle versus,
Okay.
you know, maybe in the area, the character, right? I mean, it's a lot of, like, I think Mr. Newman might have mentioned, or Mr. Vick, you know, some smaller home sites nearby, maybe this isn't the best place to now bring in something that's never existed there. So they might limit it to the number of animal units that you have. So if it was like 9.9 animal units, like Mr. Vick mentioned, once again, I don't misquote me or quote me incorrectly if Tracy were to listen, but you know, it might be close to like 9 cows or something. You know, you're not getting more than that. And not saying you ever have to use them. It's just a limitation.
I'm satisfied. You answered what I wanted to know.
Okay.
Thank you, Russ. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, adjourned.